Hi folks. I often get asked questions along the lines of how do I test a microservice or how do I test an API? See, often what happens is I get testers, they come to me, they say, well, the developers have finished their microservice, now I've got to test it. What tools do I use? Well, now I could say, well, Postman's cool, got a nice UI, you can get a nice script style testing experience to it, you can even run it on Jenkins if you're a little bit clever. Or if you want something more powerful, more declarative, more integrated with the rest of your application, you could use maybe Java with RestAssured. Maybe if you want to express the business requirements a little bit more clearly, you could use Cucumber. But usually I don't say that because often what is happening under the hood is they're asking the wrong question. See, the real question is not what tool should I use? It's when should I start testing my microservices? Because the problem is if you're testing microservices after they've been built, after they've been developed and deployed into some staging environment, you're already really late to the party. The best time to write tests for a microservice is before you write the microservice. With microservices, working in an outside-in fashion, working in a test-first fashion, writing, collaborating to discover exactly what the contracts are, what the requirements are, what the inputs and outputs are. It's so easy and such a game changer that there really isn't any excuse not to do this. But if you're working in a traditional test-after approach, then the architecture is baked in. The architecture is hardened. You can't add testability into your system after the fact. It's much, much easier if you think about it before the fact. If you say, right, we've got this input, it's coming from this other service, coming from this database, and then we're going to do some processing and produce this output. So then we can mock out this other service so we can get lots of different combinations. That sort of conversation is way easier to have earlier rather than later. Later, forget it. The developers won't change anything. Earlier, yeah, you can integrate stuff. You can even get developers participating in that automation process. So rather than thinking about what tests you want to use, think about how you can start to have conversations before you start developing. Just use example mapping or feature mapping if it's a more complex requirement, or just write tables on a whiteboard. Sit down in front of an editor and write out some REST queries, write out a few key queries and responses. I do find example mapping really useful for that because you can get a very nice breadth first approach. But whatever you're doing, use some conversations to think about the examples, the queries, the inputs and outputs you need. And if you are working on a larger system, that's where you start to think about contract-driven approaches, where you have tools like Pact and so forth. That's a bit more advanced, that's a bit more technical, but before you start to think about what tools you need, start to think about how you're going to collaborate to understand what you need to do. Not just at a high level, but in a detailed level, down to the APIs, down to the REST calls, down to the actual queries and responses. If you can get that cracked, the tooling bit's pretty easy.